Question number 70 of the IT Passport exam from Finance. We are now in the strategy portion of the exam. In this question, we are being asked the operating profit when the sales quantity of product is 700 units is as shown in the table below. When a unit sales price is reduced by 20% to expand sales, the sales quantity increases by 20%. How much in yen is the operating profit at this time? Here the variable cost per unit of the product does not change. Let's highlight a few keywords. We're talking about 700 units. We also need to reduce the sales price by 20% so that the sales quantity will be increased by 20%. What that means is if we have 700 units, then we'll need to increase that by 20%. A while ago, I was doing this again and it took me a while to figure out the correct answer, but I did arrive with the correct answer, which is letter B, 204,000 for the amount of profit in yen. I think even the one that I did about half a year ago also had the problem with the solving the problem as quickly as we can and then arriving at a solution, but finding out that the answer that I got is not in the choices, so I had to redo the whole thing and then ended up with the correct answer, which is 204,000. In this case, I think the problematic part, which I think a lot of people also make a mistake with, and I think I also committed when I first attempted to answer this, was to increase this one by 20% right off the bat. And actually, if you do that, you'll end up with the incorrect answer because you need to subtract the cost, this one and this one, to arrive with this one. But if you increase this by 20%, immediately you won't get the 204,000. You'll get something much larger. So I had to look into why I got the wrong answer, and it turns out that we go back to the 700 units. That is what we need to increase. And if we increase the 700 units, for example, 700 times 20% gives us 840. But at the same time, the amount of money that we get per unit has to be reduced. So instead of getting the full amount, we need to reduce the price by 20%. So for example, if it's 1,000 yen per unit, then we reduce it by 20% and we get 800 in that way. And then that is what we multiply with the total amount of units that we got, which is not anymore 700, but instead is 840. So that's why we get 840,000 units multiplied by 800 yen, which gives us the total sales of 672,000. Once we do that, there's still another thing that we got to do, which is to increase the variable cost by 20%. So this one. And then once we do that, we can subtract the total sales with the variable cost and the fixed cost. The fixed cost, I ended up not changing it anymore and seeing if there's an answer available or not, and I did get letter B right away. So turns out I didn't really need to do anything with this one anymore, and just changing the variable cost, because um, we expanded the sales, increased it by 20%, and so the cost, the variable cost, would be much higher too. And after doing the subtraction, I did get letter B, which is the correct answer. Let's see my notes from about half a year ago to see if there's anything else that we can add. Okay, from here we can see that we need to increase the units. This is the important part here. We increase the units, so we got 840. The sales, we need to figure out how much each unit would cost. So previously, it's 1,000 yen per unit. We got that by getting the number of units and how much we got for sales when we have all those 700 units. And now we want to know how much we get per unit, per one unit. And we need to update the price, reduce it by 20%, and that's why we get something like this, 800 yen per unit. And if we got 800 yen per unit and we increase the number of units by 20%, that's 840 multiplied by 800 yen. That's why we got 672,000 yen. So that would be the total sales. For the cost, we got 700 units and 140,000 yen. What we need to do is we need to expand the or I mean we need to increase the cost, because we're building more. We have more of the units being sold, and so the cost would also be increased. So um, let me see. If we got 700 units, okay, I think this is a little bit roundabout way to answer this, because a while ago I did a little bit different, something a little bit different, where what I did was just get the 20%. This one seems like a roundabout way to answer this. So instead of doing this, I did the 140,000 yen and then multiplied it by 20%, because we're increasing the amount of units um, that we are building, of course with reduced price. And of course all those units that we're building we're selling too, right? And we get here the 168, which is what you get if you add 140,000 yen with the 28,000. So this is another way of answering this, except that it appears a bit roundabout when I look at it now, because what I did a while ago was just multiplied by 20%. So once we have that, we just simply need to subtract the 672,000 yen with the cost, and also the other cost, which is the fixed cost, and we'll arrive with 204,000 yen, which is letter B. I have another set of notes here that are a lot more messy. Let's see what I wrote down. I think this was the first time I attempted to answer it. Okay, so again, you can see that I was tempting to find out what the answer very quickly from what I could understand from the description, but I ended up not getting the answer at all, and so I had to look it up and see what went wrong. See, I immediately, let me see if I have it here too. So it looks like I got the 840,000 yen here, which is not supposed to be the correct amount because it has to be 672,000 yen. So I did the same mistake about half a year ago, and it's also the same mistake I did a while ago, except that in this case, I think I got the answer much faster because I just multiplied 20% to the variable cost and then arrived with 204,000. The other thing that we can see from my notes is that the yen symbol and the yen symbol here can be confusing, I think, for people who might not be used to writing these things down in this way. So we gotta be careful with that too, because if you got a yen here and a yen here, if they're the same, then you might as well use one instead of confusing yourself with a lot of the symbols if it's just the same meaning anyway. Okay, so again, 204,000, letter B, that's the correct answer.